Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about and go over the Obsession with Selfies project. Now this is a project that we're going to be working on for the next couple of weeks, and it will involve your making images based on the concept of this sort of social phenomenon of the selfie, which is a self-portrait. Selfies are quite possibly the most sort of prolific, not prolific, but the most widely used genre in the world today. We might even say that we are in an era of the selfies, our artistic movement of the selfies. As you can see here, in 2016, there were around 24 billion selfies that were uploaded to the internet. That's not how many total in the world. That was how many were put up and posted in the year 2016. What that means is that nearly 250 million people were making about one selfie every 3 days. So what does this mean? Has this change the way that we look at ourselves? Is this a change in the way that we look at our own culture? Why are selfies so important to our image-making culture? Is there a reason that we enjoy looking at other people's selfies? An entire platform, Instagram, essentially exists because of the need to want to see what's going on out there, what other people are doing. Sometimes, like with celebrity selfies, these aren't even people that we know. This image is the most shared selfie with almost 3 million retweets. We follow people, we watch the lives of people through this sort of concept of them. So why do some of us make so many selfies? Is this a new phenomenon, or have human beings always been fascinated with seeing their own face, with seeing the face of others? Is there something comforting about that when we think about our everyday lives? So there are some questions that I want to pose to the group, and that will be the topic of the first, I guess you could say, discussion board. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. But these questions really are about what your opinion is on this subject. Now, some of you may find yourself not being interested in this subject at all because perhaps you don't make selfies. If you don't make selfies, the real question then is why not? Is there a conscious reason that you don't make selfies? Do you, somehow feel that it's inappropriate to show your life on to thousands of people, or what? So, how many selfies do you make a week? If it's 0, then why don't you make selfies? Is there a reason? Is it a conscious effort that you don't make those? Why do you think? What do you think is the reason that taking selfies has become so popular? Whether you do it or not, there's no denying that that millions of them are being made every single day, and that it has sort of transformed our culture, the way we interact with one another. And I have a feeling that is not going to change anytime soon. Is there a downside that you can see? Even if you make a lot of selfies, have you experienced a downside to taking and sharing selfies? What are the rules? Are there rules or conventions for taking selfies that are universal? Myself, I don't do a lot of self-portraiture that goes up on the internet. I would say that that I'm quite a novice at that. But if there are rules, where did they come from? Are they ever changing? And if so, is it okay to break these rules? So to start us off in this project, what we're going to be doing is today we're going to write a post titled "Name What About Selfies." So that's going to be the first posting to the blog. You're going to put that up there. And it's essentially going to be a response to the questions that I have right here. Questions, these several questions that I've put up. So you're going to write a posting and put that up there as a response to those questions. Then over the next 3 days, from today until Wednesday, we'll have ongoing blog postings. So this is basically our blogger version of a discussion board that we're going to be working on. So over the next 3 days and by April 1st, what I want you to do is to respond to at least 3 other students. You can respond to more, but we're looking for you to respond to at least 3 other students, and then reply to folks that have responded to you, do 2 responses to those replies. So there becomes a bit of an interaction. This is pretty typical standard stuff for discussion boards. Wednesday, that'll be the last day to post these comments on what about selfies. I'll be sort of hovering. I'm not going to be participating as much in those ongoing discussions. I may have a thing or two to put up there if there's a question about the project and so on. But the last day to post those comments are going to be on Wednesday. And then that will be effectively a shoot day for you. Every day is a shoot day for you, but that will particularly be a day where we'd like to get you started. So once we're through that, the next idea is to begin making images. And we're going to be working through a variety of styles. So as artists, we know that that we must be in tune with what's going on in the world, what's going on in our culture. That doesn't mean that we have to sort of bend to that. Selfies have been going on for centuries. Human beings have always made photographs of themselves or images of themselves, and photographs ever since the first publications of permanent image making back in the 1830s. So what we're going to be doing is exploring a variety of sort of out-of-the-box structures for making selfies. We have 5 different experiments or 5 different models that you can be working with. So selfie experiment 1 is the reflected selfie, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Selfie 2, the disguised selfie, which is a kind of different style of working. Those of you that are into cosplay might enjoy that particular experiment. The selfie experiment 3, that's the obscured selfie. Talk a little bit more about that as well. Selfie experiment 4, the shadow selfie, which is actually one of my favorite. This is one of the ones that I really enjoy working with because of just the nature of light. Selfie experiment 5, that's going to be the disappearing selfie, or you could also maybe describe it as this sort of abstract selfie. The idea here is you're going to choose one style or try them all. You don't have to dive into an experiment with every single one of these. You will choose one style, or you may try them all. You may choose 2 styles, 3 styles. Ultimately, you're going to you will create and post 15 different selfies total, and that could be 15 of one model, or it could be 3 of 5 different models, or it could be a few of this one and a few of that one. So you'll be able to choose. The last day to post comments, of course, again, is on Wednesday, and the shoot day you'll begin with these projects where you experiment with these selfie styles. Monday, April 6th, that's a week from today, you will have posted 6 images by then. You could post them earlier than then, but the deadline for posting those images is going to be 9 a.m. On Monday, and then we will all meet on the blog for real-time responses to those first images between 9:30 and 10:30, which is our normal meeting time anyway. So that's going to be a meet on the blog. Unlike what we're doing this week, which is not meet on the blog, it's more like a discussion board. So our meet on the blog will be on Monday. So let's talk a bit about the experiments themselves. Here we are about 10 minutes into the video. I've kind of explained the project. Let me talk a little bit about each of these concepts. You will feel free to go on and explore samples and varieties of these. Some of these you're going to be very familiar with, and some of them may be completely new to you. The idea is to explore out-of-the-box models, though. So selfie experiment 1, the reflected selfie, that's essentially where you're using your own image through a reflection. And I would encourage you to think beyond a simple mirror. Now, the image here that I have, that is thinking beyond the simple mirror. Of course, there is a mirror, but it's not simply this person aiming a camera directly at a mirror and that's it. What she's doing is incorporating the rest of the composition, rest of the elements into the composition. One of the things that you will have to consider when you're working on the reflected selfie is, in fact, whether the camera is hidden in the image or whether it is literally showing in the image. This is something that I want you to consciously be thinking about. Shiny curved surfaces like polished car panels have potential for something like this. You can see here this dude's holding a chrome ball, which is creating that sort of distortion. The way that I would really encourage you to work, and the way that I tend to work when I'm dealing with the reflection selfies, is layers. Layers through glass, so that you're getting this sort of sense that you're seeing behind yourself and in front of yourself. So experiment with, for instance, it's a shop window or out your own window, since we're not really going to places right now. Or maybe a sequence of glass and mirrors, things like that. Next is the disguised selfie. And this is where, as I have mentioned, you folks who are really interested in like dressing up or cosplay or playing different characters, the actors in the class are really going to sort of enjoy this. These 3 images are from Gustave Courbet, and they were made in the 1840s. These are paintings, of course. But this is just to demonstrate that the idea of the selfie, the distorted self or the disguised self, where you're portraying yourself as something other than who you really are, a character of sorts, is not new. The image on the far right, that is a photograph of Gustave several years later. This is him, I believe, maybe in the 1860s or so, taken by a photographer named Nadar. And the image here on the left of the clown there, that is Nadar. And that's a self-portrait as a famous clown, Perrault, that was made in the 1850s. Of course, you have the Andy Warhol. He made several portraits throughout his life. You could qualify them. I think he would have some interesting things to say about culture today and the selfie. And Sam Fosso here, a self-portrait as Dr. Martin Luther King. Sam Fosso, he did an entire series of images where he was portraying key figures from the African-American culture. Gillian Wearin, she as Claude Cahun, holding a mask. And finally, Cindy Sherman. Now, Cindy Sherman is... She made an entire career, basically, of the disguised selfie, herself as another character. This happens to be pulled from one of her series of images that she made very early on, where she was portraying herself as the sort of female characters of films in the 1950s and 60s. As you can see here, this is dated in the late 70s. So this was really a sort of a commentary on the way women were being portrayed in society. Next, we have the obscured selfie, and this is kind of associated with the disguised selfie because, in a way, you're kind of you're not portraying yourself literally, but really, what this has to do with is where the face is somewhat obscured, because the selfie is really about the face, and so when the face is obscured, you have this kind of this sort of feel to it that goes beyond the what you are normally expecting. Here we have several examples, literal examples of that, where someone is just quite literally covering their face. And this is a way to go if you're going to go with the experimenting with the obscured selfie. You could be working in this mode where it's very straightforward. However, excuse me, there are ways to sort of work beyond that, you can see here Delaney Allen has this really cool image of this sort of dust, or sand that's being sort of thrown about, creating the obscuring. And then there's Francesca Woodman. That's the image on the right. Now, Francesca, she made a series of images of herself, and all of these are taken by herself. No one was making the images. And as you can see in this picture, you see her feet there, and she's holding this sort of cloth up above her. And then over there, just to the right, you see a hand, and those are both her. What she would do is create these very long exposures where she would have the image of herself in one space, and then during that exposure, when I'm talking about long, like 3.5 minutes, she'd be standing in one place, and then she would very quickly move to another spot after a period of time, and creating these very ghostly images. So if you have an exposure, if you have your camera settings and you can set it to something of several minutes, you can experiment with this kind of idea that Francesca had, and I would encourage you to go on and take a look at more of her images. The shadow selfie. Now, this one I really enjoy because it talks more about light, the nature of light and shadow, or the absence of it when we're talking about shadows. Photographers are particularly sensitive to this, and so those that are that are very interested in the nature of photography, this one would be definitely one that I would encourage you to explore. You want to experiment with your own shadows, explore qualities of your shadow. Is it long? Is it fuzzy around the edges? Is it short? Is it crisp? We're really talking about hardness. And how does the surface of the shadow that's cast on affect the shape and the clarity? So it's not just about making an image that is of your shadow cast on a sidewalk. It's really more about what you're doing with that form and how your shadow is affecting the space. Here you can see I have a series of images where that's sort of happening. The one to the left, you have the woman, and it's cast shadows onto the surface of another thing, in this case a bed frame. In another instance, we're using other shadows to complement and move the image or move the composition in a variety of ways. Finally, on the right, what's being done there is you have a sheer cloth, and the camera is on one side of it, and then the model is on the other side of that. And so what you're getting is this sort of illuminated from behind sort of thing, which is a whole nother way to work with it. Also, if you are obscured, if you're creating yourself as a silhouette, that can really work as a shadow selfie. That's kind of what's happening here. Finally, the disappearing selfie, and these are basically, just think close-ups, extreme close-ups. This is where only a part of your face is visible. You're using the character, you're using the shadows, you're using the the textures and the tones of your face as a compositional element. And so you want to be thinking of what kind of elements can you make that make this not look accidental but intentional. And so what you want to be doing is a lot of imagery that you might otherwise be thinking, oh, that's not quite right. I cut my head off, or I'm not fully in the frame, and things like that, and moving past all of that. So those are the 5 the 5 experiments that we're going to be working on. As I said, you may choose one, you may choose all of them, you may choose 2. I would encourage you to just sort of experiment with and play with all of them, and then make a choice as to which ones you're going to be moving forward with as your experiment. Here's a listing of the dates and deadlines. Again, I've gone over the first few here. Monday, March 30th, that's today. You're going to be posting the What About Selfies response to those questions. Then we have the ongoing blog postings. That is in your time frame. You're going to be going up onto the blog and responding to 3 other students, sort of our discussion board. April 1st, that's the deadline. That's the last time that you're going to be posting comments on the What About Selfies written statements. And then you'll begin your shooting. April 6th, mark that on your calendar. That's our meet on the blog, real-time responses and replies. We're going to have your content up no later than 9 a.m., although you could have it up earlier, of course. The blog title for that is name OWS, Obsessed with Selfie. First images, it's just your first images, so 6 minimum. These images don't have to be included in your final. Wednesday, that'll be a shoot day. Monday the 13th, that's the final posting. You can add images to that OWS for a 15 images total. You can pull down ones you already have up there, switch them out, and so on. But that's the deadline for that. And then we're going to be doing, again, the ongoing blog postage. We won't be meeting for real-time responses and replies. We're going to be, over those 3 days, responding and replying to each other on the blog there. So this is the handout that I will be making available to you. I'll be sending it to you. I'll put it up on a variety of places so that you can get to it. It's going to be a PDF, so I'll send it to everybody email. But you'll choose from the 5 selfie experiment descriptions and make 15 selfies. You may decide to try all 5, hone in on just 1 or 2, but nonetheless, you're going to shoot dozens of images and select the best 15 to post. I want you to identify the selfie style for each image that you post, though. That way we know what you're trying to achieve. Of course, you can shoot in color, you can shoot in black and white, or a combination of these, it doesn't matter. But I don't want you to use AR modifiers like bunny ears and swooning stars and stuff like that. You can edit in Photoshop using the appropriate method that we've been working on. You can create the 4x5 format if you choose, or leave them in the framework as you have. So there's options for you that will be outlined there in the handout. The handout will also include descriptions of each of those selfie styles that I went over already. So that's it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to send an email, aaron.alexander@csupueblo.edu. Please, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, things like that, don't hesitate to respond to me. And that will be all. So we will see you on the blog.